This is a presentation of Point of Taxation Rules 2011 under Service Tax. What is point of taxation and why this rule is introduced? We know service tax is a tax on a taxable service. Now the question arises, at what point of time this service tax will be levied on the taxable service? That is, whether it will be levied when the service is provided, that is rendering of service, or it will be levied when invoice is raised, that is raising of invoice, or it will be levied when the payment is received, that is receipt of payment. At which point the service tax is leviable on a taxable service? This is what introduced or explained in Point of Taxation Rules 2011. Now, what does this rule says? In general, service tax is leviable on a taxable service on either rendering of service or receipt of payment, whichever is earlier. In general, this is the scenario. That is either on date of rendering of service or on date of receipt of payment, whichever is earlier. But uh, uh, various rules were available within that, which explains the concepts, and there will also be a slighter deviation from what I have said now. We'll see one by one. First, we'll see what is Rule 2A. We'll see what is Rule 2A. Rule 2A basically talks about date of receipt of payment. If you just recall, I said point of taxation is something either date of completion of service or date of receipt of payment, whichever is earlier. Now that date of receipt of payment is what explained in Rule 2A. So which date shall be taken as date of receipt of payment? Whether it is the date of entry in books or date of credit in bank. Which date should be taken? Rule 2A says whichever occurs earlier. That is whether date of entry in the books or date of credit in the bank, whichever occurs earlier. But again, there is an exception that if the gap between these two is more than 4 days, if the gap between the entry in the books and credit in the bank account is more than 4 days, then you have to take only the date of entry in the bank account as date of receipt of payment. This is what explained in Rule 2A. Now we'll move on to Rule 3. What does Rule 3 talk about? Rule 3 talks about determination of point of taxation. So this is one of the important rule in point of taxation rules, because this only tells you at what point a particular taxable service shall be liable for service tax. Now, what does this rule says? This rule takes two classifications. Classification 1 for a taxable service where invoice is raised within 30 days. Classification 2 for a taxable service where invoice is raised after 30 days. So, what is the treatment if invoice is raised within 30 days? If invoice is raised within 30 days, point of taxation shall be either date of invoice or date of receipt of payment, whichever is earlier. And what is the point of taxation? If invoice is raised after 30 days of completion of service, point of taxation will be either date of completion of service or date of receipt of payment, whichever is earlier. Here if you notice, if invoice is raised within 30 days, weightage is given for date of invoice. If invoice is raised after 30 days, invoice date is taken out and the date of completion of service becomes the parameter. If invoice is raised within 30 days, date of invoice will be compared with the date of receipt of payment. If invoice is raised after 30 days, Date of completion of service will be compared with date of receipt of payment. This is the essence which have to be understood. An example will be more clearer. We'll take an example now. I'm drawing a table to analyze various combinations of dates. Column number 1 shall be for date of completion of service. Column number 2 shall be for date of raising of invoice. Column number 3 for date of receipt of payment. Column 4 to know the exact point of taxation, and column 5 is left to know what will be the applicable due date for remitting that service tax. Okay, assuming this is the case applicable for a company, say A Limited, and column 1 will be the date of completion of service, column 2 date of invoice, column 3 date of receipt of payment, column 4 point of taxation, that is on which point, on which date service tax liability arises, and column 5 due date. We'll take an example. Case 1, date of completion of service is 10th April 2012. Date of invoice is 20th April 2012. Date of receipt of payment is 30th June 2012. So we have to find out on which date point of taxation arises. So for this we have to see rule 3. What does rule 3 says? What does rule 3 says? Rule 3 will ask us to check whether invoice is raised within 30 days or after 30 days. In this case, if you compare the gap between the date of completion of service and date of invoice, it is within 30 days. So invoice is raised within 30 days. Then in such case, point of taxation shall be either date of invoice or date of receipt of payment, whichever is earlier. Here date of invoice is 20th April, date of receipt of payment is 30th June. So whichever is earlier. Date of invoice is the earlier date. So point of taxation will be date of invoice 20th April 2012. Now the due date shall be, due date for payment of service tax will be 5th of the next month, that is 5th May. This is case 1. We'll take another case. Date of completion of service is 10th April 2012. Date of invoice is 26th May 2012. Date of receipt of payment is 30th June 2012. So what is the point of taxation? We have to go back to rule 3. Rule 3 will ask us to check whether invoice is raised within 30 days or after 30 days. In this case, date of completion is 10th April, date of invoice is 26th May, so which is after 30 days. So this classification will be applied. So if invoice is raised after 30 days, then you will not give weightage for date of invoice. Weightage will be given only for date of completion of service or date of receipt of payment, whichever is earlier. In this case, date of completion of service is 10th April, date of receipt of payment is 30th June. So whichever earlier, 10th April is the earliest date. So point of taxation will be 10th April 2012, and the due date will be 5th of the subsequent month, that is 5th May 2012. See, in this case, if you look at the PT, since the invoice was raised after 30 days, he is asked to make the payment of service tax on 5th May, but the payment itself is getting received only on 30th June. That is, he is getting the payment only after paying his service tax. And this is happening because he has not raised the invoice within 30 days. Had he raised the invoice within 30 days, assuming 10th April is the completion of service, had he raised the invoice within 30 days from 10th April, assuming say he raised it on 8th May, then in that case 8th May or 30th June, whichever is earlier. So 8th May will be the point of taxation date, then 5th of the subsequent month, that is 5th of the June, would have become the due date for payment. Here 5th of May is the due date, but it could have been 5th of June had the invoice been raised within 30 days. So this is the concept to be understood. We'll take another example. Date of completion of service is 10th May 2012. Date of invoice is 20th May 2012. Date of receipt of payment is 15th April 2012. In this case, if you notice, work is completed on 10th May, invoice raised on 20th May. Within 30 days, invoice has been raised. Then in that case, date of invoice or date of receipt of payment, that is either 20th May or 15th April, whichever is earlier. In this case, payment has been received in advance. So 15th May will be the point of taxation. 15th May 2012, and due date for payment will be 5th of subsequent month, that is 5th May 2012. We'll take another example also. Date of completion of service is 10th April 2012. Date of invoice is 26th May 2012. And date of receipt of payment is 5th May 2012. On which date this shall be subject to tax? You have to compare the date of completion of service and date of receipt of payment. Date of completion of service is 10th April. Receipt, sorry, you have to compare date of completion of service and date of invoice for rule 3 purpose. 10th April and 26th May, gap is more than 30 days. Then rule 2 will apply. I mean, the second classification will apply. That will compare date of completion of service or date of receipt of payment, whichever is earlier. In this case, completion of service is 10th April, receipt of payment is 5th May. So whichever is earlier, 10th April will be the point of taxation. Will be the point of taxation, and the due date will be 5th May 2012. So this is the basic understanding of rule 3. Now we'll get into rule 6 of service tax rules. What is this rule 6 and why it is discussed now? Because it is a slighter deviation from rule 3 and it is applicable for cases where service income is up to 50 lakh. So what does this rule 6 of STR, Service Tax Rules 1994 says? This talks about two cases. Case 1 where service income is up to 50 lakhs. Case 2 where service income is more than 50 lakhs. If the service income is up to 50 lakh, then an option is available for service taxpayer. That is, instead of following rule 3 basis where service tax is decided on date of receipt or date of invoice or date of completion, instead of following that method, if a service income is up to 50 lakh, receipt basis can be followed. Date of receipt of payment only that can be followed. So this is an option where service income is up to 50 lakh. If service income is more than 50 lakh, if service income is more than 50 lakh, then up to 50 lakh receipt can be followed. Up to 50 lakh receipt basis can be followed, and for portion more than 50 lakh, rule 3 have to be followed. Okay, so this rule 6 of service tax rules is applicable even now, and for most of the individuals or say firms or LLPs, they'll get benefit out of this rule. So applicability is for individuals, LLPs, firms. This is about rule 6 of service tax rules 1994. Now just to summarize, we have discussed about rule 2A, rule 3 and rule 6 of service tax rules 1994. In rule 2A, we have seen what is date of receipt of payment, that is, it is either entry in the books or credit in the bank account, whichever is earlier. On rule 3, we have seen what is point of taxation based on cases where invoice is raised within 30 days and after 30 days. If it is within 30 days, then date of invoice or date of receipt of payment, whichever is earlier, and if it is after 30 days, then it will be date of completion of service or date of receipt of payment, whichever is earlier. We have also seen some examples. Then we have seen rule 6 of service tax rules 1994, which is applicable for individuals, LLPs and partnership firms. It classifies services as service up to 50 lakh and more than 50 lakh. If it is up to 50 lakh, then instead of following rule 3, receipt basis can be followed. Service tax can be paid on receipt basis. If it is more than 50 lakh, then up to 50 lakh receipt basis can be followed, and for the portion above 50 lakh, rule 3 have to be followed. Thank you.